Evening, everyone, and welcome to the 3-day Shin Splint Challenge. So as people come on, I'm Dr. Heather, and I'm just really super excited to be launching the first ever Shin Splint Challenge, where we're really going to kind of go in depth over these next 3 days regarding shin splints and how to essentially just finally rid ourselves of shin splints. So as people are coming on tonight, just want to remind people, make sure you give StreamYard permission. So this way, if you're, commenting or anything like that this evening, that we can also see who's on right now. And like I said, welcome. So guys, before we really jump into, what day one is all about, want to go over some stuff with everyone that's going to be on tonight. So as you're starting to get yourself settled, as you're starting to kind of come on, want to really kind of run through what to expect as we go through the course of this 3-day challenge. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to kind of go over what you guys should expect, essentially kind of over these next 3 days, and really having a better understanding of kind of what this whole 3-day challenge is about, and really what to expect a little further. Now, just a reminder, if you're catching the replay, do hashtag replay when you do watch it, because I would actually like to know who else is watching and catching the replay. And then if you are watching live, the only way to kind of win any of the giveaways that we're doing throughout the 3 days, you must interact with us when we are live. So again, if you're watching and catching the replay, do hashtag replay. And if you're watching live, go ahead and let us know where you're watching from this evening. Say hi, because I'm Dr. Heather, and I'm super excited to be hosting this first ever Shin Splint Challenge, really designed around education and helping you guys finally get rid of shin splints. So like I said, I want to kind of go through what to expect as we embark upon this journey together over the next 3 days. So that's what we're going to go over right now. Now, if you haven't gone ahead and joined the Facebook group, that is actually going to be really key. So we want to go ahead and take care of that. So do go ahead and join the Facebook group. That's going to be really important as we go through the challenge here. So like I said, there's going to be some stuff that we do want to go through as we get started, and that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to pull that up onto the screen, and hopefully we don't have too many glitches this evening as we go through this. So guys, like I said, welcome to the 3-day challenge. My name is Dr. Heather. As I mentioned, you want to make sure that you join the Facebook private group, because that's where you're going to catch the replays. That's also where you're going to get some extra worksheets that we're going to have in there. You're going to find them under the guide section. So that's really important that you note to kind of make sure if you missed anything, want to rewatch something, go to the guide section in the private Facebook group and make sure that you go ahead and you catch everything there. And if you have additional questions, obviously drop them into the Facebook group as well. So now really to give you guys a better understanding of what to expect over the next 3 days, well, day one, we learn. So tonight is all about basic anatomy, really understanding what is the difference between anterior and posterior shin splints and why the shins become problematic. So tonight you kind of get to kind of chill a little bit more, get to have that notepad out, try to focus in a little bit more. This is going to really go over kind of the nuts and bolts of why the shin splints get irritated. And then tomorrow night, night 2, is when we're going to really be more active. So day 2 is when we do. This is where we're going to learn how to really effectively massage out not just the shins, but the lower leg, really go over some stretches that are classic, but then some stuff that you may have not seen, and then really addressing various different types of exercises and creating that whole entire action plan for you guys. Which brings me to day 3, where now we're going to really go through everything that we just learned, everything that we just did, and now we're going to put together that action plan. So like I said, if you're catching this live, go ahead and let me know, where are you watching from tonight? You know, you can always tell me, are you having shin splints on both legs, one leg? Because we want to really now start answering some questions too regarding shin splints, you know, and that's going to be part of day 3 as well, is where we're going to really start addressing some of the questions you guys have had over the course of these 3 days. So like I said, make sure you're joining the Facebook private group, because that's where we're going to go into more detail regarding some stuff as well. Now, some of you guys may have not met me yet on social media. You may have read some of my blogs and some of the private groups, but, you know, I put together kind of like a little bit of, who am I? You know, who is Dr. Heather? Had a little fun when I put this together because, you know, I went through, found some childhood photos. There I am playing softball, you know, away kind of up in the Vermont area. Because if you guys don't know, I'm based in Connecticut. So I am definitely no stranger to athletics. I've been an athlete all of my life since childhood. I think it probably started at the age of 4 with gymnastics. But then also too, just kind of really fell into some love of just strength training, conditioning, using multiple different types of modalities like TRX, like kettlebells, incorporating HIIT training, boxing. I have a great passion for running. Running is actually one of those things that helped me throughout graduate school, just kind of giving me more mental clarity. And if you don't know by now, this is me today. I am known as your virtual sports chiropractor, and I'm really adamant about trying to help people feel better. That is like my main goal, is to really make people feel better. And, you know, try to, you know, help everybody just really understand their pain and discomfort, you know, and really try to figure out ways that you can heal your body naturally. Just want to make sure, don't forget to give permission to StreamYard. So this way, instead of it just saying Facebook user, we actually know who you are and where you're watching from. And we can say hi, like we're going to say hi to Jerry right now, who always tunes in. And I appreciate always all the support, Jerry. So thank you so much for always watching. So now, guys, like I said, we're going to start diving into really day 1. And, you know, day 1 is all about education. So with that being said, we really want to kind of have a better understanding of what's going on when we talk about shin splints, and that's what we're going to really start addressing tonight. So like I said, if you're catching the replay, please let me know when you're watching, and if you're on tonight, let me know where you're watching from. It looks like we have somebody from Ontario, and if you want to have some more specific answers to anything that you're dealing with regarding shin splints, you know, start dropping some comments down below, or leave comments in the Facebook group as well, because come day 3, we're going to answer some of those questions. You know, we're going to really start kind of breaking them down. And just so you guys know too, you may have heard, I do have a special guest that's going to be coming on. So we're going to have an actual 4th day, which is part of this challenge. Super excited. You'll learn more about who that special guest is as we kind of get things rocking and rolling with the 3-day challenge. So guys, with that being said, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. And like I said, hopefully there's not too many technicality issues going on. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to share and start kind of getting us a little bit more into the anatomy. So that's where we're going to start next. And it looks like we've got some other people coming on as well, all the way from Mexico. And again, if you guys want, give StreamYard permission so we know who is watching. And, you know, happy to say hello to everybody who is watching. All right. So again, welcome to the 3-day Shin Splint Challenge. Like I said, my name is Dr. Heather. I am your virtual sports chiropractor. Super excited to be doing this because this seems to be the #1 complaint, other than pretty much people wondering if they have runner's knee or IT band issues. This really does seem to be the #1 complaint throughout the pandemic, as so many people started really taking up running due to all of the gyms being closed. So this was a problem that I have been seeing, and a lot of people really struggling with how to really help rid themselves, I should say, of shin splints. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to really start now focusing in on really the education, which is going to really help us when we start going into tomorrow night, when we go into pretty much the whole treatment protocol around shin splints. So that's what we're going to start with tonight, is the anatomy. So guys, like I said, don't forget, give StreamYard permission so we know who is watching this evening. And if you're excited to be here, give it a thumbs up. And if you're finding value as we go through this too, hit that like button, give it some hearts as well, because I'm, again, just super excited to be here and help you guys kind of really understand shin splints. Okay, so what we're going to do first, like I said, is we're going to start talking about the anatomy. So if you're not familiar with my teaching style, if you haven't met me yet, you might not know that I am huge into education. I want you guys to really be able to walk away with solid knowledge. I want you to feel like, okay, wow, I just got a nice mini crash course kind of in anatomy and physiology, but it wasn't over the top. It was generalized. It really kind of gave me a better sense of understanding my body and what is going on. So as you can see on the screen right now, this is a, just generalized anatomy picture. The front of the body is always known as anterior, and the back of the body is always known as posterior. That's going to be two phrases that you're going to hear me refer to actually throughout the 3 days. So I kind of want to get you a little bit more comfortable with that. Front of the body is anterior, back of the body is posterior. Now, this picture doesn't kind of give all the musculature, all the ligaments and everything that goes into the lower leg. And when we talk about the lower leg, we're really talking about essentially the muscles that are in between, just below the kneecap and pretty much right where the foot meets the ankle. That's exactly where we're going to be addressing throughout the next 3 days. So like I said, we're going to kind of go over some specific areas. Now, a lot of times, and I think I had posted this a long time ago, and this probably was good last year, right when the pandemic was at its highest, and people were starting to run more and they were complaining about shin splints. I'd asked the question, I said, do you know if you have an anterior or a posterior shin splint? Now, a lot of people, I think, were like, well, I don't know if I have an anterior or a posterior shin splint, because I didn't know there was two that could possibly be contributing to my pain symptom. So, excuse me. With that being said, I want you guys to pay attention really carefully to what's known as your tibialis anterior, which is the muscle that's right up here. That is known as our anterior shin muscle. Now, this picture here that I have up on the screen does not show the tibialis posterior muscle, but my next slide actually is going to do that for us. So we're going to pull that up in just a sec. So if you can see on this slide here, if you can look at it, so here is the fibula, which sits on the outside of our lower leg. Here is our tibia. And if you can see here, this is the posterior tibialis muscle. So I'm going to flip back. I'm sorry to do this to you guys, but I'm going to flip back. And if you can see, here is the tibialis anterior. It sits very front to the body. Now, our posterior tibialis, okay, so this is the right lower leg here, would be further kind of back in here, off to the side and kind of deep inside. So just understanding that alone, again, can kind of change a little bit of the dynamic on how we're going to go about in treating our shin. So like I said, there are two muscles that can be affected in shin splints. It's very important for us to understand, is it an anterior or is it a posterior shin splint? So that is going to be key number one. So now with that being said, let's actually kind of now go into that just a little bit more so you guys have some understanding. So now, this is our tibialis anterior muscle. This is a clear picture that I've pulled up on the screen for you guys right now. And again, as you can see, this is our tibia. And then our fibula is off to the side. So again, this is a picture of the right lower leg that you can see on the screen right now. Now, yes, these are more of the medical terms in terms of really understanding the origin, meaning where does it start? And then the insertion is where does it end? So again, that's just some more medical jargon for you guys in terms of understanding, the point of origin and the point of insertion. So with that being said, it's very important to understand that the tibialis anterior muscle does dorsiflexion of the ankle. So what does that mean? That means actually pulling the toes towards your head. So, right away, that kind of gets us to thinking that if you are potentially a heel striker and you're already putting a lot of tension under that foot, meaning you're really starting to pull the toes towards the head, that muscle then is going ahead and staying in a state of contraction, which could be potentially leading to a shin splint. So again, this is, like I said, this is what I want you to get from here. This is your tibialis anterior. It is commonly probably the one muscle out of the two that is more commonly seen with people who suffer with shin splints. But again, want you guys to kind of be aware there are two muscles. So I want to go over the second muscle with you guys now, which really is the tibialis posterior. And like I said, this muscle sits deeper. So if we pull back that anterior muscle, yes, lo and behold, we should go ahead and we should see that posterior muscle underneath. Now, wondering, okay, if we know the tibialis anterior goes ahead and pulls the toes towards us, well, what does the posterior muscle do? Well, that one actually points the toes down, and that's what's called plantar flexion, meaning it actually pushes the toes down. And then the other thing it does do as well is what we call inversion, which is kind of bringing that foot in and slightly with what we will actually call like plantar flexion with a little bit of a dip in. That is known as inversion of the foot. So again, like I said, these are the two muscles that when we look at shin splints, we want to have a better understanding of which one is creating the pain, which one's creating the discomfort, because it is a little bit more prevalent in figuring out what to do as far as treatment protocol goes. So again, like I said, guys, if you're catching the replay of this, please let me know. And if you're finding value in this already, in terms of just starting to understand the anatomy that's wrapped around your shins, give it a like as well. So now moving on, we want to start now looking at, like I said, movement. And I started already addressing that with you guys a little bit, already in starting to understand movement is going to refer to the range of motion of the lower leg. And essentially, we're going to start looking at 4 different movement patterns of the lower leg. And when we talk about the lower leg in terms of movement, we really are actually looking at the ankle and the foot. The musculature, though, resides obviously, off of the tibia, off of the fibula. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at the movement of the foot by addressing the foot and ankle. So like I've already stated, I wanted to kind of go ahead and understand this is a clear diagram right here for you guys. That's dorsiflexion, that's plantar flexion, and it's very important to understand what muscles go ahead and do that. So as you can see, dorsiflexion, tibialis anterior, boom, right there. Plantar flexion, yes, it's your soleus as well, and it's some of the hallucis muscles and the digitorum longus muscles. But again, look, if you can see there's the tibialis posterior. So very important to understand, what muscles are contributing to these ranges of motion. Now, I already started to talk about it a little bit more. And now what we want to do is look at the difference between inversion and eversion of the foot. So in some of my posts in some of the private groups, I've talked about, are you a heel striker? Do you pronate? Do you supinate? What does that actually mean? And this is where this comes in. This is so key here. So if you can see that even though you may dorsiflex the foot and engage the tibialis anterior, and inversion, you're going to notice that both the tibialis anterior and the tibialis posterior play a little bit more of a role, and it's not so much when you invert the foot out. So this is all having to do really when you bring the foot kind of in a little bit more. And like I said, there there is going to come a time to really understanding, well, how do you correct this? Should you be correcting an inversion, eversion pattern? We're going to get to that more on day 3 when we start addressing questions revolving around customized orthotics and insoles. So like I said, if you are catching this tonight live, this is part of the 3-day Shin Splint challenge. We're really addressing kind of the anatomy, the physiology, and understanding the movement patterns that go into this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to really start addressing the why. So if you've been watching this already and you're starting to get some value in it, go ahead, give it a like as well. And if you want to go ahead, make sure you give StreamYard permissions and let us know where you're watching from this evening. Like I said, I'm coming to you live from Connecticut. So I'm super excited to see some people coming in from Mexico, some people coming in from Ontario. So guys, really excited to just have you all here this evening. So now we want to really start addressing why. Okay, so that is the number one question that has been resonating with people throughout the pandemic in terms of really starting to not know, why are my shins causing pain? Why am I having this discomfort? And why isn't it going away with traditional care? So that is the number one question. That is the number one complaint that I've been seeing across the board on all of the social media platforms. And that is the problem I've chosen to address with this 3-day challenge and with various other posts and videos that you can always find on any of my social media sites. And by the way, if you haven't started following me on YouTube yet, if you haven't started, checking out some of the other videos that I do regarding other injuries, always do subscribe to the channel as well, because that is just another great resource for you guys where, again, give it a lot with education, and then also too, giving you guys a lot more tools that you can use to help heal your pain. So now let's go into the why. This is going to be really key for us, you guys. So a lot of you who are on this evening are runners. You guys are, either beginner runners, you're training for specific events, and you're starting to kind of get, these little aches and pains that are coming along. Number one reason why we get shin splints is very simple. We're overtraining. We've, started increasing mileage distance too quickly, and it's pretty much a shin splint issue is an overuse issue. That really is the nuts and bolts of it there. It really is an overuse issue. And that's where we always say, okay, well, if you can do that classic treatment and rest, ice, massage, it should go away. Problem comes into the fact of, and I've addressed this before in other videos and in posts as well, we have to look at that kinematic chain, meaning we have to address from the foot and ankle all the way up pretty much into our lumbar spine, and then sometimes going all the way back down. Then that's something we're going to start really addressing a little bit more in day 2, where we really start looking at how to, deal with that whole kinematic chain to really rid ourselves of shin splints, for good. Now, with that being said, with now understanding that shin splints, is an overuse injury, what are some things or what are some other common causes that can be included here? So that's one of the things we're going to start really breaking down a lot more for you guys this evening. So this is where I love Couch to 5K. I think it's a great, solid program for all beginners out there. But I think what happens is sometimes, we think, okay, well, I think I can go further. I think I can go a little bit further. Do I really need to walk? Do I really need to take breaks in between? So for a lot of the beginner runners that are going to be catching this, and like I said, if you're catching the replay, please let me know. I think sometimes you guys start doing things a little too quickly, and then the shin splint does create that problem, and then you wind up hitting a huge setback. Now, the other issue that we notice with a lot of people who wind up getting shin splints is obviously the type of surface. So, I've asked this question to people before as well as, I'll always say to them, what kind of surface are you running on? Are you running on a treadmill? Are you running on the trail, the sidewalk, the pavement? Because even if we're not really have the best footwear, the type of surface that we're running on is going to go ahead and create some what we call like a reverberation, where you're going to feel that shock kind of going right through the heel, right through the lower leg, and it's going to kind of trigger everything going up. So you have to remember something, that if we're on a hard surface, that's going to give us poor shock absorption. And that is something we want to really look at. And that's where sometimes, when people are asking questions regarding footwear, in terms of what sneaker they should buy, a lot of times people will suggest a shoe that has more cushion in it, and that is for the shock absorption. So now, the other thing we want to start addressing is, and this plays into, what we started learning about the movement of the foot in terms of inversion, eversion. Now, this is where we want to look at, are you an overpronator or an oversupinator? So these are going to be two things that start to kind of, go into a little bit more of understanding what happens with the actual run gait. So this is something we're going to start addressing a little bit more in day 2 as we get into the exercises, and then a lot more in day 3 when we start really understanding what goes into a gait analysis and how, we want to address overpronation, oversupination issues. Now, understand when you run, you do want to have some pronation. It's natural. But to have an excessive amount means that your body is going to respond accordingly, meaning that you're going to have what we call muscle imbalances and compensation patterns kind of setting in. And again, this is kind of stuff we're going to start addressing a lot more on day 2, because we're going to start looking at what's called your neuromuscular firing patterns and understanding kind of how to not really correct the overpronation, oversupination, because you may not be able to fully correct it. There are some things you can do to kind of subside it a little bit, but you're not going to be able to fully correct it, especially if you're like me and we're a little bit older now and everything's calcified. But what we want to address is muscle firing patterns, compensation patterns, and muscle imbalances. So if you're prone to weak ankles and things of that nature, definitely on day 2, when we start going into the balance component of the exercises, that's really going to play a key role in this for you guys as well. Now, the other thing we're going to start looking at too is the excessive stress on your legs. So, I'm all for running for weight loss. I think it's a great way to get out there and to get started, but we have to remember that if we have a lot of stress, if we have a lot of weight, so even those who like to run with weighted vests, ankle weights and stuff like that, that can actually sometimes lead to a shin splint, because our body now is trying to kind of offset that load as we're running. So as our leg is trying to move through a plane of motion, usually, obviously a forward plane of motion, you might have some trouble here because there might be more stress on the lower limbs than necessary. Now, the next one is kind of that one that I think we automatically go to when we get a shin splint. First thing we do is think, oh, it must be the sneaker. It must be the shoe. We've got to go and fix that first. I am here to tell you guys that actually isn't going to be the answer to go right to the shoe first. It is a part of the equation, but it's not going to be the answer that's going to resolve the shin pain. It may subside it, but again, in day 3, we're going to talk about that with the gait analysis a little bit more. So I don't want to really, touch upon it too much here with the anatomy section. So the next one is really going to talk about the flexibility or stretching of the muscle. So when we run and we understand how that leg is supposed to move through that range of motion, how the foot is supposed to hit the ground. Some people say you shouldn't heel strike the ground. Some people say you should land more midfoot, toe foot. It's all going to come down to kind of your style of running in terms of just how that foot is naturally going to want to hit the ground. But what we want to make sure is that the muscles themselves have good flexibility and mobility. So this is something, again, I address heavily, throughout any of my videos. So if you do subscribe to my YouTube channel and you've watched any of my videos, you'll see that I always put an emphasis on really kind of understanding flexibility and mobility, because you first need to have those, and then you can go ahead and really put in the proper strength training programs that are going to help you kind of eliminate the pain and take it a step further. So, that's something tomorrow night we're going to start really going into, is understanding kind of flexibility, mobility of the ankle, looking at some solid stretches, and then really how to advance it a little further with balance exercises designed around proprioception. So it's putting a signal into that muscle, getting that muscle firing, and then from there, really seeing a change happen. And then when you go to start running, you should notice that the foot's going to hit the ground or strike the ground a little bit differently, and it should feel a lot better. Now, the other issue is flat feet. Flat feet, you can definitely be more prone to shin splints. I am a flat foot person. I also too pronate as well. I've always done that, but I don't have shin splints because, again, I address certain issues around my ankle. So even though, you may have flat feet, you could have high arches, things of that nature. This is where, sometimes once you've done all the correctives, you've done, the whole protocol, and you're still not seeing or noticing any difference, a little bit more with the foot there. So now, guys, the last thing, here in terms of one of the other things that can create some issues with shin splints is going to be, like I've already started to address, is the muscular imbalances. Okay. So that really has to deal with, weak ankles. So a lot of us may not know, well, how do you know if you have weak ankles or not? So a simple little test for everybody that is watching this, just go ahead and try to stand on one foot. If you're barefoot, even better in your home, and just kind of notice what you feel when that foot is trying to just kind of gauge, its own responsiveness in terms of musculature. What do you notice? Do you feel your calf burning out? Do you feel the plantar fascia, which is the bottom part of your foot, tightening up a little bit more? What do you really notice there? So that's just a nice little easy test that you can try, is stand on one leg, just see what you notice there, because what we're going to do tomorrow night is, after we do, like I said, the traditional kind of treatment protocol, for shin splints, we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to really start addressing, neuromuscular firing patterns and imbalances, all wrapped around single leg movement patterns, all wrapped around balance oriented exercises. So, tomorrow night is going to be a lot more on the do. Tonight is more about the learning. So, like I mentioned, this is something that I'm really excited about with you guys tonight, because simply, shin splints has been the number one complaint pretty much throughout the entire pandemic. And like I said, this is a chance for us to really start understanding what's going on at the shin and how we're going to go ahead and eliminate that discomfort. So now, if you guys have some specific questions regarding shin splints, I really encourage you tonight, in the Facebook private group, drop some comments in there. Tonight's recording will also be in the guide section in the Facebook private group as well. And then I've put together kind of like a little cheat sheet for you guys in terms of, an overview of what we went over to this evening in terms of the anatomy, understanding movement patterns of the foot. Now, just remember, there are two muscles that are involved here, known as your anterior tibialis and then your posterior tibialis muscle. Now, both of them can contribute to shin splints, but primarily, usually it is the anterior muscle that is the one that's the main culprit here with shin splints. But a lot of times, some people will experience more of a posterior shin splint. Remember that an anterior shin splint, That's because that muscle then is getting put under too much tension, meaning that you probably are more of a heel striker when you're hitting the ground. So you're probably landing a lot harder, and you're starting to really force that foot to come up towards the head. And that if you are more of a posterior shin splint person, you may be actually running more on the ball of the foot, putting a little bit more overstretch in the muscle there, because that muscle is, or I should say, does contribute more to plantar flexion, which is pushing the toes away from the head. So like I said, a lot of the main, or I should say the common causes of shin splints are going to be things that we're going to be addressing throughout the 3 days of the Shin Splint Challenge. Like I said, we're going to be addressing more when it comes to muscle imbalances, firing patterns, and so forth on day 2, along with the traditional course of action that goes into it, understanding flexibility, mobility, how to really fully stretch out, and use foam rolling, massage balls as well. And then day 3, we're going to start really understanding what is a gait analysis. So that's something I've mentioned before in some of the private Facebook groups, is understanding the difference between a gait analysis and a functional movement screening and how the two play. And a gait analysis is going to be something that, if you're still uncertain of, kind of how that shin pain is creating discomfort, a gait analysis is a great eye opener to really having a better understanding of what's going on at that foot and ankle and how you can address those symptoms a little bit more. And then also too, like I said, on day 3, we're going to address kind of proper footwear and looking at customized orthotics and insoles as well. So guys, like I mentioned, my name is Dr. Heather. I am the host of the 3-day Shin Splint Challenge. And if you're getting value out of just tonight alone, give it a like. And like I said, if you're catching the replay, do let me know, and make sure you're giving StreamYard permission when you're watching, so I know who is watching. And also too, let me know where you're watching from. I'm super excited about this. Now remember, tomorrow is day 2. We come on here live at 7:30 Eastern time. Again, that's primarily because I'm here in Connecticut. So we're doing this after hours for me, after essentially I'm done with all patients here out in my private practice. But again, like I said, day 2, we're going to be getting ready to go through the actual step-by-step program. So have your foam rollers ready for tomorrow night. Have your massage balls ready. If you don't have a massage ball, you can use a tennis ball, a lacrosse ball, or even a baseball or a softball, just to kind of give you guys some better general ideas. And then if you have a firm chair or a flat bench, you will want to have access to that tomorrow night. You could even use your stairwell as well, because we're going to go through some single leg movement patterns. And then, excuse me, like I said, we're going to be addressing some balance issues. So you don't necessarily need anything to balance on. But if some of you, do have anything like a Dynadisc, a foam pad, a Bosu, anything like that, you're welcome to use those. I've even had in the past, some people use like a dog bed that was kind of more memory foam to do some balance stuff. So, we get a little bit crazy, we get a little bit creative when figuring out what people have access to and how to recreate some exercises. So like I said, tomorrow night, we're going to really step into part 2, where we're going to do. So tomorrow night is a very active session where I'm going to be coming to you live, and we're going to be going through a step-by-step coaching process where I'm going to take you from literally point A all the way through to the end point and really show you guys how you're going to go ahead and put together an awesome kind of like protocol that you can use to help rid yourself of shin splints. All right, guys. So if anybody has questions regarding tonight's, information regarding the anatomy and physiology, drop comments in the Facebook private group. Otherwise, I'm going to catch you guys tomorrow night live right here again. And we're going to be going through the do. So do catch me here live. All right, everyone, have an awesome evening. And I'm super excited for the 3-day Shin Splint Challenge. And like I said, I'm Dr. Heather, and I look forward in working with all of you tomorrow evening. All right, everyone, have a great night.